Greetings, quarantinis, and welcome to the latest edition of Soundproof. My name is Brendan Lewis. Go by Mr. BDog46 in some forums, and I'm joined, as always, by Jake Muller. One of us is locked down, and it's him, but welcome to episode 18 of our podcast here. And you join us here in a very different world than last time we came to you.
No, I mean, like last time we were all kind of aware of Corona and what it was doing in countries like China and Italy, but now, even in the short 2 weeks since our last podcast, it's kind of blown up. Even like here in America, a lot of regions are kind of locked down. I'm not actually locked down. Texas is not in that territory yet, but restaurants have started to close, and like I've been working from home for the last week and a half, and so that kind of thing is happening here and a lot of other places as well.
All right, so it's kind of a crazy time. I've still been going to work and everything because I do work in healthcare, but it's crazy just to be driving around. There are like no cars on there. I live in Boston. There's no traffic. I get to work in 15 minutes every day. It's very different. Everything's very different. But anyway, we're gonna do our part here to try and sort of tailor our podcast, at least for this week, towards some of the things that are going on. So we do have for the second half of our podcast this week, Brian Tan as on a guest, and we will be kind of highlighting some of the online things that you can do in the VGC realm to try and make up for the fact that our circuit was basically kind of canceled indefinitely.
Yeah.
So there aren't really a lot of there aren't any live tournaments that are going to be occurring at least until, I think you said it was May 15th, Jake, is the date or something like that?
I believe so, yeah.
So we'll talk about some of the tournaments, some of the content that's available, all things BGC that you can do from the comfort of your own home. So that will be a little bit later. But first, we just did, and this is something that I feel very personally about being a healthcare worker, and I do work in nursing homes, so it's something that is hitting relatively close to me. So I just kind of wanted to highlight some of the things that you should be thinking about and doing. Given the state of the world right now, and basically it's all kind of been publicized in the media at this point, but definitely be taking seriously all of the recommendations that are being handed down from organizations like the CDC. So please don't feel like you're invincible and it's okay for you to continue to go and try and live your life as you had been previously. It's very important for everybody to be social distancing, to make sure that you're practicing good hand hygiene. I know a lot of people feel like there are obligations or engagements that they have to do, but definitely, do everything in your power to really try and isolate yourself as much as possible.
Wash your damn hands, you nasties.
You nasties. Don't forget to wash your other self part.
No, only your hands. Don't shower.
I was gonna
just only wash your hands every day and you're fine.
Yeah. But yeah, I know at this point it's you've heard it all before, but I really encourage everybody. I'm not sure, if I can say anything, I do work with an elderly population, and it is definitely a very real threat for a lot of these people as far as their mortality is being brought into question. And I know everybody that's listening to the podcast, unless we have a geriatric sect of listeners, is not necessarily falling into that demographic, but really be respectful of the people that are immunocompromised or elderly, and do your part to stay in your apartment.
Yeah. On to the fun stuff, though.
On to the fun stuff. I'll get off my soapbox. So we are on episode 18 here, and we do have our suite of Pokemon for the week that are ending in -18. And starting off in Kanto this week, we do have the final Pokemon of the Pidgey line, which is Pidgeot, which is probably my favorite of the trio. I don't really care strongly for Pidgey or Pidgeotto, but Pidgeot is cool. Its Mega is neat, but it didn't get Focus Blast, which would have made it an actually good Pokemon.
Yeah, no, that would have been cool. I like Pidgeot. I think it's a cool design, especially the Mega. I think the Mega is aesthetically a super cool design.
Definitely.
But it doesn't really have much competitive value, unfortunately.
Yeah, even the way that they designed the model, where it's flying all the time and it looks really fast,
yeah.
I think is really cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The next one is Goldeen, which is so here's my this is what I associate Goldeen with, is in, I believe it's in Melee. One of the things that you can pull from a Pokeball item in Super Smash Brothers
Yeah.
Melee is Goldeen, and it just kind of like flops around there. And I always was very angry about that because that's Magikarp's thing. Like, if Goldeen's going to be in the Pokeball, like, it should actually be doing something because it's not, billed as a useless Pokemon. But it was the useless Pokemon that you could roll from the Pokeballs in Melee, and that always made me angry.
I'm pretty sure it's still in. I think it's been in every game since then.
It should be Magikarp.
I know.
I won't stand for this.
Yeah. I know Misty had a Goldeen in the anime. And I kind of like its cry, not its cry, but like the voice acting for it again in the show.
Was that one of the one that had like a deep feminine voice?
Yeah, it's like Goldeen, Goldeen. I remember it was always like that.
Thanks for the impression.
You're welcome. I'm really good at them.
Yeah, our one Johto Pokemon of the week is Slugma this week, which is a Pokemon that I just really don't feel anything towards.
Did you call Slugma a Johto Pokemon?
Wait,
is it not?
Oh,
wait.
I'm pretty sure it is. No, it is. It definitely is.
Is
it? Yeah.
For a sec, I thought it was definitely a Hoenn mon,
No,
but
it's
you're
definitely
right.
a Johto Pokemon, but it's funny because I was about to make the point that it's one of those Pokemon that you don't associate with Johto.
Yeah.
Kind of like I almost always am forgetting that Marill and Azumarill are Johto Pokemon because they're so difficult to find in at least the original Gold
Right.
and Silver. I don't know if they changed it in Heart Gold Soul Silver. But Marill, you have to like be in like a certain room in the water in a specific cave, and I can't even think off the top of my head of where you even get Slugma in Silver and Gold.
Oh, you can only get it in Kanto. It's like it's a post-game mon. Yeah.
Good.
That makes sense, because I had no idea Slugma was a Johto mon, but I should have known that by the number. Because like, we haven't done the Johto Legends or like Tyranitar or anything yet. Huh.
Right.
Weird.
But yeah, it definitely is. You had me second guessing myself for a minute, but no, it definitely is.
My go-to example for that kind of mon is always Skarmory. Like, Skarmory technically existed in Gen 2, but it was so rare that you would never know.
Find.
Then it was like, I remember always catching one in like Ruby and Sapphire when I played that game. So.
Yeah. Marill is another one of those. Skarmory is another good one, and there's another one that I was just thinking of that I can't now. Girafarig.
Oh, yeah.
And this one I don't associate with like Ruby and Sapphire so much, but you could definitely play through Gold and Silver and not know that Dunsparce exists. Like
yeah,
you
the Dark Cave was like an entirely
you
non-essential.
Don't have to go in there.
Yeah. Anyway.
Onto actual Hoenn Pokemon for the week is Carvanha, which I kind of like the design of Carvanha a lot because I feel like at this point in like the state of the game, they hadn't necessarily like explored the idea of like a true glass cannon Pokemon. Like, they didn't set out to make a glass cannon.
Yeah.
And this is one of like the first examples of like a line that epitomizes the idea of a glass cannon.
Yeah, that's like the very definition of glass cannon is Sharpedo, and I think they both look really good aesthetically. Like,
they're cool designs.
Yeah, like they're clearly meant to resemble like piranhas and sharks, and they do that very well.
I think, and maybe we'll talk about this next episode, but Sharpedo, I don't know if it had something to do with like the way that I was picturing the sprite at the time, but when I played Ruby and Sapphire, I always pictured it as a full shark. Like, I never thought that it was like cut off,
half
like
shark.
the tail was cut off or anything
Yeah.
like that. And I didn't realize until there were like 3D models that it actually just like doesn't have a tail. So I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at what the
I
Ruby
think
and
the
Sapphire
back
sprite
sprite
looks like.
The back sprite is just like up to the fin anyway, so you wouldn't see the back.
Yeah, it's like ambiguous,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yeah.
I don't know.
That's wild.
My
I don't know why
favorite-
it doesn't
yeah.
have a tail, but
My favorite Carvanha memory, I guess, not that this is like nostalgic or anything.
my
But-
fond memory
yeah.
of Carvanha.
No, there was an event in Pokemon Go when Carvanha's Shiny was released, and the very first Carvanha I clicked on during that event was Shiny, which is,
That's cheating.
if you know Pokemon Go at all, that's rare. Like,
Hacker.
the boosted rates are usually like 1 in 100, if that. So
Right.
it was a
Even on
good
Community
time. Community is like 1 in 20, but that's
right.
different.
The next one, as we go into Sinnoh, is Buizel, which I actually like. I like Buizel a lot. I think, what is the Floatzel is
Yeah.
the other one. I think Floatzel is dumb looking, but Buizel I think is really cool. It's like the idea behind it of it being like a sleek, fast water type with like the tails that makes it go really fast. Like, I feel like it's cool looking. I like it a lot.
They should have given Propeller Tail to Buizel in the new games.
Did they give a lot of old Pokemon new abilities though? Like
No,
it might
like
just
not at all.
it might just already have 3 ability, but
I'm sure it does.
it literally has a
Yeah,
propeller tail.
we can retcon
Like,
it.
arguably just as much, if not more so, than Barraskewda.
Well, Barraskewda literally has a propeller for a tail, but like Buizel uses its tail as a propeller, which is my argument.
Okay, I guess that's valid. Well, you know what? Actually, it only has 2 abilities. It doesn't have 3.
Ooh.
So I guess they theoretically could add. It has Swift Swim and Water Veil.
Hello, here we go. And that's
You
when
think
they gave like Torkoal Drought
make it
as a
usable?
second ability when it only had the one main one. So
Right, where White Smoke was like its signature
Right.
ability. Oh, it's definitely a possibility. The next Pokemon is Musharna, which I don't really feel anything towards.
I really like it. I think it's cool. It's a neat design. It was like one of my first experiences with competitive Pokemon was this like gym league that I played in on Reddit, and I was using Musharna during that. So it's kind of a nostalgia mon for me, but I kind of like it. You know, like, we all know I like purple things. Musharna has like some purple hues on it. I like Trick Room with telepathy, so you can like have Earthquake mons or Explosion mons next to it. That's something I enjoyed using when I was a very, very new competitive player too.
Yeah, Musharna was one of the original Boom Rune mons.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next Pokemon is Stunfisk, and it's funny, I was just looking down this list, and I associate the word Stunfisk more with the subreddit
too.
than I do with the
Yeah.
Pokemon at this point. So I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's weird. This is like one of these things on this list of Pokemon is not like the others. One is a subreddit.
And not a Pokemon.
Right, but no, Stunfisk, I think it's a cool Pokemon. I like the Galarian Stunfisk design a lot. I think it's really cool.
It's like a little bear trap. That's really neat.
Yep. It was a pain in the neck to like be stepping on those things constantly
Right.
when you were going through Galar Mines number 1 or 2 or whichever one it was. But it's cool. It's cool.
Mm-hmm.
I always liked that it was a ground electric type and had Limber.
Yeah.
It's kinda
You can't paralyze it
Rotom
anyway.
Fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
like,
funny.
There's zero way you can't paralyze it. Number 718, as we finish our tour through the legendaries of the oh my god, the name escaped me. What region is it, Jake?
I'll let you think about it.
No. Just please bail me out. It's not Alola. It's the one before that.
It is
the French one.
Kalos.
I can't. It's what?
Kalos.
Oh god, Kalos. Okay. Okay. Zygarde.
I think Zygarde's cool. I
Um,
really like Thousand Arrows is such a crazy move, and I really like that concept.
Even Thousand Waves is neat. I
yeah.
feel like people like it's like the little brother of Thousand Arrows.
Right.
Thousand Waves is really cool also.
And I think it looks like a cool mon too. I like the normal 50% version, I guess it is. I think it just has a cool like
prefer
sleek
the
look
10%
to it.
version.
I don't see that's my
Yeah.
least favorite. I don't like the dog.
I think the Megazord one is really dumb looking. I've
I
never
do
really
too.
liked it that much.
Yeah, I like the middle one the best.
It
The
looks
others are just
it
kind
looks
of-
far more like a Digimon than it does
yeah,
like a Pokemon.
definitely, or like a transformer.
My favorite Zygarde story is that hour.
Yeah.
Jake knows exactly what I'm talking
Uh-huh.
about. I think it was it 2017?
I think so. Yeah.
Where the numbers in the rules document weren't added correctly, so Zygarde 10%. I believe it was only 10%, right?
No, they all have the same dex
It w-
number.
Oh, okay. Well, Zygarde. It was before Complete was released. That's why.
Yeah.
So nobody was thinking about that. But for about an hour, Zygarde was VGC legal.
It was so funny.
In a restricted dex format.
Yeah.
And everybody was losing their minds.
That was really funny. Like we all knew
And
it was a
that was,
mistake,
like,
but
That was the fastest. Well, I mean, I think everybody that was rationally thinking about it knew it was a mistake, but there were also the people on Twitter that were like, but what if it's not? But that was the fastest I've seen a rule stock update. It was literally like an hour and they re-released it. And then the final Pokemon is the only Gen 8 Pokemon of the week, Inteleon.
yeah.
Which is getting a gun this summer.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. I think we've kind of
It's getting a
we've
gun,
beat
Jake.
this dead horse enough. The starters in this new game were, they're fine. But
Inteleon pays NRA dues. Yeah, I don't. Inteleon is my least favorite of the three. I think.
yeah,
It's close. I don't really love Cinderace either. But yeah, it's cool competitively. I think it was something I immediately wrote off as a competitive Pokemon, honestly. kind of like the same way that I wrote Kartana off immediately as
Right.
a competitive Pokemon, and that was history. But it's a little bit more niche than Kartana ended up being,
Yeah,
obviously. But it does a lot of damage.
Definitely.
It's crazy. Like the Helping Hand specs Snipe Shot to knock out Max Durant.
Mm-hmm.
I thought was a really interesting adaptation to Durant meta.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it for the Dash 18 Pokemon. I actually like this. I thought we had some interest. Like there have been some weeks where we were just like, okay,
I know.
Caterpie is like a Pokemon, but there were a lot that we actually got to talk about this week, which was fun. All right, so we're gonna touch on the ladder this week, and I really do. I don't know if I'm really kind of like giving away our like trade secret all of a sudden, but there was a website that was released recently called Babiri.net, which basically automatically crawls and pulls all of the top ladder teams. So I highly recommend that as a resource. So we're still going to be, instead of going through and like pulling replays ourselves, we are going to be using Babiri probably from here on out. So we will highlight all the teams that are at the top of the ladder and continue to kind of like provide our, observations of the team and our thoughts on it. So that said, we will jump into it. The first team on the ladder this week, and I believe Babiri was able to pull all 10 teams from all top 10, which is interesting. I know that I don't know if they're using.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
launched,
the numbers are like their actual ranking.
Right, when it launched, it definitely was like, oh, team not found. So it wasn't pulling from teams that had replays hidden. So I'm not sure if they hid all of the team not found or if they actually just pulled all 100 teams this week. But anyway, the first team on the ladder is a team of Dusclops, jeez, Mimikyu, Tyranitar, Arcanine, Milotic, and Ferrothorn.
That's pretty cool. Like we were talking right before we started recording, and noticed that Dusclops is popping up on a lot of like good stuff kind of teams now, and this is a pretty good example, I think.
I think, and I'll draw more attention to some of the things that Babiri does, but I'm looking at the usage stats that were pulled, and three of the top 4 Pokemon in usage are Ghost types.
Oh yeah.
And this is a team that really emphasizes that. Obviously, the team that PokeAlex and Rio Pacer were using at Malmo was a team that featured 3 ghosts. One of them was Aegislash, so that's a little bit different. But people are definitely kind of recognizing the power of ghost types, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that like their only true check is Tyranitar.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of like deal with Tyranitar, and even Mimikyu isn't necessarily checked by it.
Neither is Aegislash with close combat.
Very right. Yeah, that's true. And it's fast Aegislash, I think, on that team too. Fast Sash with no King Shield, which is awesome.
Right.
I think that's really cool. But it's just like it's very hard. It becomes very hard to prevent ghost types from at least like getting 2 or 3 turns to operate, just because of how good the typing is in this meta.
Definitely.
Speaking of teams with multiple ghost types, the second team on the ladder is very similar to the first one, featuring Dragapult, Tyranitar, Arcanine, Mimikyu, and then the final 2 Pokemon are Rotom Mow and Gastrodon.
It's like the same kind of roles in each slot too. Like they both have Mimikyu, Arcanine, Tyranitar, another ghost type, a water type, and a grass type. And like what you do with those roles. Like this one looks much more offensive than the previous one, because like everything, well, I guess not the water really, but like Rotom is much more offensive than Ferrothorn. Dragapult clearly much more than Dusclops.
There's a ton of pressure. Yeah.
And then like Gastrodon and Milotic are kind of comparable, but
they're like interchangeable on some teams.
A little bit, yeah.
Like both variant or the Goth Durant team that was going around has used both of those Pokemon in the past that kind of flip certain or change different matchups. But yeah, very similar. And obviously Mimikyu usage is spiking, especially after the run that Wolf made in Dallas. Or not Dallas. Collinsville. Yep. The next team is pretty typical hard Trick Room, although it is a little bit different, and I think, I'm going to be honest, I like this kind of variant a lot better than just throwing Torkoal on there and like being 100% reliant on the Trick Room going up. But it is Dusclops, Butterfree, Rhyperior, Gastrodon, Arcanine, and Indeedee.
Yeah, I somewhat agree with you. I really like Torkoal on Hard Trick Room. Like I think it's stupid good. But like this is definitely a team that has like defensive options too. So I respect Arcanine here. I imagine that's like Bulldoze Dusclops to pop the Rhyperior, because
I'm sure. Yeah.
Like, that's a really good combo. Like otherwise it's just Hard Trick Room. Like there's not a whole lot to say about it.
The next team, number 4 on the ladder, is a team that features Corviknight, Charizard, Clefairy, Excadrill, Rotom Wash, and Mimikyu. And one thing that I did kind of want to ask your opinion on is the state of Gigantamax Corviknight, given like Lapras meta.
I think it definitely got much more viable, I think is the word I'll use, given the popularity of Lapras. I don't particularly think I would call it like good. I don't know if I'd like recommend using it, especially because I don't really think you want to be Dynamaxing Corviknight most of the time. Like especially on a team like this,
Right.
like Rotom, Excadrill, and Charizard all really appreciate Dynamaxing, and even Mimikyu to a certain extent. So like Corviknight's probably what you want to be maxing the least. But I like if you are running Corviknight, I probably would run Gmax just in case you want to have like that. Cause like if you are able to get like a Wind Rage off once a Lapras is set up Veil and then finish its Dynamax, then you're in a much better spot than before. But even then, I'm not sure if it's worth it just because maxing Corviknight means you lose a lot of your other offensive options.
Did you know that Wind Rage also removes terrain?
No, I didn't. That's cool.
Yeah, I found that out. Somebody actually used Gmax Corviknight. It was somebody on my team that used Gmax Corviknight in an NPA match the other day, and it removed terrain too. And that's when I found out. I did not know that it did it. I'm not sure if it only does it on Showdown or if that's like it working as intended.
I imagine that's as intended.
Yeah, I found that out.
That's cool.
Yeah, one more thing to really highlight about this team is we are inching, and perhaps not just inching, into Clefairy meta.
Yeah,
it's happening.
Clefairy's been popping up a lot. It showed up a lot in the recent like Zelda challenge.
Yeah, it did really well there. Yeah.
So I don't know. I think Clefairy's cool, especially now that it has only now that it has Friend Guard is it really usable again. But
right.
if Friend Guard is a difference between opposing Dynamax mons taking KOs and not, I think it's certainly worth using, and I imagine that's why people have been using it.
Definitely. I wonder. I think it also gets Brick Break, which is really interesting
neat.
as well. Yeah. So you can do stuff like that. The number 5 team on the ladder is the roguiest team on our countdown this week, which is a team of Indeedee. I promise it gets weirder. Lucario, Blastoise. I had to double check what the name of this Pokemon was, but because it doesn't immediately like come to mind. But Barbaracle. I hope I'm pronouncing
probably.
That right, I'm not sure I've ever said it out loud. And then Incineroar and Togekiss. So there are 2 water-type shell smashers. That seems to be kind of like the idea behind this.
Yeah, this is neat.
Neat's a word for it.
It would be neat to watch. Like I don't think I would ever use it, and I would hate to play against it because it's one of those teams that you have no idea what's going on. But it's cool. Like I see what they're going for. I'm sure that Indeedee is meant to help. Well, either Indeedee or Togekiss actually is meant to help like set up stuff, and I don't know. It's a team, all right.
It's fun. Yeah. It's fun. And just as I continue to like pitch Babiri, they do have a button on next to each team that says latest replay. So Jake and I, being naturally curious about the function of this team, clicked the latest replay button and just watched it get, kind of annihilated on the ladder. So take our words with a grain of salt, but it is definitely a really cool team. At 6 on the ladder this week is a really good team that kind of illustrates a couple of different meta trends that are happening right now. The team featuring Dracozolt, we just talked Corviknight, Primarina, Excadrill, Incineroar, and Clefairy. So a couple of Pokemon, specifically Dracozolt, Primarina, and Clefairy, that are all kind of like spiking in usage right now.
I think Dracozolt's a pretty cool response to Lapras. It's probably one of the few Pokemon that can... I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing it can probably just still OHKO Gmax Lapras with something like a Life Orb or Choice Band Bolt Beak. Just because it's so strong. And then that's like a really nice thing to have if you're a team that doesn't really want to be facing something in Aurora Veil. Primarina I think is pretty neat too. Like Water Fairy is actually really strong coverage. And I like Primarina's pretty strong, like special attack wise. And like Liquid Voice Hyper Voice is really cool if you want to go that route as well.
All right, and the spread Liquid Voice Hyper Voice is one of the things that lets you take on stuff like Togekiss Excadrill. Like Arcanine, Excadrill, Arcanine, Togekiss, like those sorts of cores that were very popular in Series 2. And then if you get it in a Trick Room, this team, doesn't have a Trick Room option, but it gives you positive matchups against all sorts of things
Yeah.
like Tyranitar and Dragapult and like all these things that the combination of Water Fairy kind of like uniquely afford you. So I think it's a really cool Pokemon. My favorite use of it is it's starting to show up on Colossal teams.
Oh, okay.
Because you kind of get the option to use like a Colossal Trick Room mode if you have a setter, or you can just like Aqua Jet with Primarina. It does get Aqua Jet.
Yeah.
So I think that's cool. The next team on the ladder, number 7, is a team featuring, this is very standard, Tyranitar, Dragapult, Togekiss. This looks like Series 2 standard. Right. Togekiss, Excadrill, Durant, and Milotic.
Yeah, it looks, pretty straightforward. Not really a whole lot of tricks going on there, I imagine. Durant is still really strong, I think, despite the kind of meta progression. It's like, again, one of those things that can do a lot of damage to Lapras, this time in its own Dynamax form, but I mean, that's not really an issue. You want to be Dynamaxing Durant anyway. So it looks like a solid team. This is something you could probably pick up pretty easily and like go X2 at a regional with or something with some practice. So like definitely a strong team.
The next team on the ladder, number 8, is some common Pokemon, but definitely a unique 6 as far as I'm concerned, that features Snorlax, Whimsicott, Arcanine, Dracovish, Indeedee, and Mimikyu. There's a lot going on that team.
Yeah, I mean, you have some like obvious combos, like Mimilax is a 2017 throwback. You have like Week 1 2020 with Whimsicott, Dracovish. And then Arcanine is still Arcanine. One thing that I'm actually noticing now is there have been way more Arcanine on here than Incineroar. And like this far into Series 3, that's probably not holdover from Series 2 anymore, I would imagine.
No, I agree.
Which
I think that people... its niche was always known as far as it was compared to Incineroar, and I think people are realizing just how good that niche is.
Yeah, I do. I think that niche is still super valuable. And obviously Incineroar is good, but I would have expected Arcanine to be lower than Incineroar in usage, but it's not appearing to be yet.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I guess ladder stats are always a little bit different than some of the stats that we can pull from IRL tournaments and stuff like that. So, but definitely something to keep in mind. The next team on the ladder is another Primarina team with looks like an apparent Trick Room mode for it. There are 3 ghosts: Dusclops, Mimikyu, Dragapult, Ferrothorn, Arcanine, and Primarina.
Yeah, I mean that's interesting.
That's cool. I kind of like that, actually.
This seems similar to some of those teams we were talking about earlier on, but the Primarina is just taking up the water type slot instead of like Gastrodon or Milo. I think it's cool. I think Primarina has a pretty cool spot in this metagame, so I'm not kind of surprised to see it popping up here and there.
Definitely, yeah, I think it's good. I didn't realize that it was like this generally perceived to be.
Right.
Like I'm not surprised that it's like seeing some play, but I am surprised to see it all over the 1900s in Showdown. And the final team that we'll touch on this week at number 10 is a team of Tyranitar, Togekiss, Milotic, Dusclops, Arcanine, and Conkeldurr.
This is another example of like a good stuffy team with a Dusclops thrown on, but I actually like this one more because you have the Conkeldurr that takes pretty good advantage of the Trick Room mode from Dusclops.
So does Tyranitar in some
situations
too.
Yeah. So I like this one a lot. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, ladder's really interesting this week. I thought this was cool.
Yeah.
Series 3 is interesting, especially if Primarina is going to be used. We would take those.
One thing I noticed when we were looking through these is on here that there's like global rank category. I'm guessing that was the rank on the ladder. So instead of like this probably isn't the top 10 teams as far as like 1 through 10 on the ladder, but it's the 10 highest teams that they could find.
So we pulled from a total of 17.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing.
That's not bad. So like 7 hidden teams. Okay, that's pretty cool. All right, so that's the ladder for this week. Unfortunately, we only have 1 live tournament to talk about, and then for the foreseeable future, there will be 0 live tournaments to talk about, as they were all kind of indefinitely canceled. So the one major live event to take place recently was the Malmo Regional, which was won just by the hardest of Trick Rooms, the same like 6 that we've been seeing since the beginning of this format, and Toby was able to pilot it to a win at a very big regional.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really not surprised to see our Trick Room do well. Like we saw back in 2017, the last kind of regional decks format we had that Gavin won 2 regionals in a row with Hard Trick Room that he attended. So it was always going to have this breakthrough, and I'm a big fan of the archetype. Like I said, I think Torkoal's really good. Rhyperior has been one of the mainstays throughout this entire format, and I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Pokemon like Hatterene really love Series 3 now because now it can use its Gmax form, which we talked about on our last podcast. But I'm a huge fan of these Pokemon in combination. Like specifically, Indeedee, Hatterene, Torkoal I think is super strong. And then those are 3 really good partners to kind of finish off that team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think somebody was saying that, I think Toby played really well on stream, but I think somebody was also saying that, he did have some situations, and not to, take away anything from the regional, but there are some situations that are afforded to you by the use of Gmax Hatterene that,
yeah.
if we look through, the usage stats for the rest of the tournament, like, aren't available to a lot of the other teams because there isn't really a lot of Hatterene outside of this team. But those are the kind of things that you take into account when you're team building and making your selection. And I think it was a really cool meta call.
Yeah.
When everybody else is playing a new format, to go back to something that has flowcharts, is a little bit more known as an entity. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
The second place team that was piloted by Radium is really interesting. It's very good stuffy, with the exception of the 6th Pokemon on the team being Serena. But is otherwise featuring Togekiss, the Sand Core, and then Arcanine Rotom. So super standard, and then Serena, which I believe somebody said was Sweet Veil.
Oh, that makes sense. That's actually kind of cool. That's a neat tech that really no one would see coming, because we all know Serena for Queenly Majesty, and I bet a lot of people probably couldn't even name its other abilities. So I like that a lot. There's a lot of sleep going around, what with Milotic, and actually Serena's actually really good stopped on Milotic anyway. Being a grass type. So I like that a lot. The combination of like Serena and Rotom on that team can shut down Milotic pretty hard.
Right, and then as well as like the Roserade that was going around, Venusaur was made legal for this tournament, so that you definitely understand the use of Sweet Veil, which is cool. And we've talked about it a million times on this podcast about how there are, the grass types are few and far between in this format. Like, why not Serena?
Yeah, why not?
The next team in third place that was piloted by Alex Gomez is the Triple Ghost team that we were alluding to. And this is like a really interesting and is definitely going to end up, even right now, I was going to say in hindsight, but definitely right now, meta-defining team that features Dragapult, Mimikyu, and Aegislash as the 3 ghost types, and then also has Snorlax, which I believe is Choice Band.
That's what I heard, yeah.
And then Togekiss and Rotom Wash.
Yeah, I like this team a lot. I've seen it being used afterwards, like after this regional. There's a lot of variations you can make to this team too, which I think is kind of a mark of a good team, is where you can like switch up the sets and still have it function really well. This is really neat. I like the triple ghost idea. Ghost types have always been pretty good. There aren't many like dart types going around other than Incineroar, which I think this team handles pretty well.
And they all have such good second types that it's like really easy to spread out.
Oh wait, you have a fantasy core that are all also ghosts. I just realized that. That's cool.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I know that they were using some really interesting sets too. This is like a slower, bulky Dragapult with Dragon Dance and Weakness Policy, I believe, was on the original version of the team. And then I talked about it a little bit earlier, but the Aegislash is like, I believe it's close to max speed, if not like actually max speed. And it's Focus Sash, and it's not running King's Shield. It's just 4 attacks.
Is it 4 attacks, or does it have Swords Dance?
Or does it have Swords Dance?
I don't know. There are probably some teams that have...
I think it's 4 attacks. I think it's Iron Head Close Combat, and then Shadow Claw and Shadow Sneak. I'm pretty sure it's 4 attacks. Yeah. So really interesting team, and while this might not be like an enduring 6, some of the ideas that the team uses are definitely like factoring into the meta right now. At 4th place, there's a Torcat that was piloted by Maddie Morgan on a team that is otherwise just kind of like the standard Lucamere Goth control stuff. He just smacked Torcat into the fire type slot.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple other fire types with Intimidate that we're used to seeing, but this time he kind of... Torcat is kind of like smashing Arcanine and Incineroar together, because Torcat's it's faster,
I think that's fair to say.
Which is like the Arcanine section of that smashed together. I don't know what I just said.
Right.
But it also has like Fake Out Parting Shot, which is like what Incineroar brings to the table, and I don't know what else you'd run on it. I think Taunt is a move people might use.
Yep, it gets Taunt, it gets Will-O-Wisp. It notably does not get Snarl.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Because I would I would think that if it did get Snarl, it might be like the objectively correct like fire type Pokemon to use. I think there's definitely an argument to be made for it as being potentially the best of the three, but it does have, you know, the niche, and I think you're totally right that it's like smashing those two Pokemon together. I am a little biased because he's on my NPA team, but this is actually my favorite team from this tournament that was piloted by Febzy to a top 8 finish that is featuring Togekiss, Lapras, Incineroar, Alcremie, Dusclops, and Rhyperior.
This is really neat. The Alcremie is pretty cool in this team. I think he used it a lot, specifically next to Lapras. So you can essentially have weakness policy and light clay at the same time. I'm pretty sure the Lapras in this team had the light clay item. So you could run like an 8-turn Aurora Veil, but also still get that special attack boost. So I like it a lot. I think Alcremie also has Sweet Veil, if I'm not mistaken, which is pretty good. Like we just talked about that with Strain earlier. But I think, does Alcremie get Helping Hand as well? I'm not sure.
I think it does. I'm trying to remember what he ran, because he had Declarate, Dazzling Gleam, and Protect.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the fourth item. I would think that it does.
Regardless, it's still like Decorate is the
is
main crux of that set for sure, and it's really
very
neat.
good. Yeah, and it also has Sweet Veil, which is another like sleep.
I said that.
Oh, sorry. The reason that I was hesitant to definitely confirm Helping Hand is because I know it doesn't get Heal Pulse.
Oh, okay.
And I was really surprised to hear that. Yeah. So like everything I knew was kind of like turned upside down when I was like, it doesn't get Heal Pulse. At 6th place was Eric Rios, running the same team as PokeAlex. You know, they tend to share, like they team good together and stuff like that. So you almost always see them running the same team in the tournament. The 7th place team was an interesting team, another take on Lapras that featured Roserade alongside Togekiss, Incineroar, Dusclops, and
it's actually
Conkeldurr.
It's the same team other than that
similar,
one slot.
Right, just the one Pokemon that are, you know, directly, that actually interact very interestingly with super effective Sludge Bombs and preventing sleep, and I think they played at some point too, or those two, I forget who, because Febzy, he played against Pato, who was piloting this team in NPA, and he said he like knew all the matchups and everything after having played it.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, the matchup favors the Alcremie for what it's worth.
Gotcha.
And then at 8th place is Jamie Boyd, who's piloting a team that is similar to another Febzy team that was, I believe, piloted by OA and somebody else was the Australian player, the first-year master.
Alfredo.
I can't think of his name. Alfredo, yes. We're piloting a team similar to this, but I believe Charizard is an addition by Jamie. But it is Charizard.
Inteleon.
We just talked about it. Inteleon, Rotom-Mo, Grimmsnarl, Gengar, and Conkeldurr.
This is neat. I imagine that's
probably
pledges. If I know Jamie, that wouldn't make sense. But it's definitely like Fake Tears Grimmsnarl, which is cool on this kind of team. Some neat stuff going on here. I think the Conkeldurr works well as like a Tyranitar check, because otherwise this team just kind of gets run over by it.
Yeah, definitely. Either that, or you need to lean on like really know your Fake Tears. Oh, you can't Fake Tears it. Oh God, I'm the dumbest person ever graced this earth. Anyway, some of the highlights that we'll touch on that are, you know, sitting in top 16. There is Edu's team sitting at 11th place that features, you know, the Tyranitar, the Gourgeist, and the Durant. So that sort of thing did seem to carry over well. A lot of the Durant constructions seem to carry over well into Series 3. I know Yuri was running almost this exact same 6 in Series 2 with the Togekiss, Durant, Milotic, Gyarados, Raichu, and Hydreigon, so that's something that seems to be carrying over as well. So it's interesting that very little changes have been made to Durant comps, and they've just been kind of getting smacked into Series 3.
The main changes from Series 2 to 3 don't really affect matchups for the Durant comps, I think. Because like,
I think it's just the prevalence of Incineroar, but
like you still have to deal with Arcanine and Incineroar in very similar ways, especially on these Durant teams. So I think it makes sense. I do want to shout out the person who got 10th place because he has my last name. So congrats, Max Muller, on your great finish at Malmo. I love it.
Yours doesn't have the umlaut.
It used to. Fun fact.
Well, where'd it go?
When I think my great-great-grandfather moved here from Germany, they took it off.
Mm-hmm.
Some Muller family history there for you.
Very fascinating. So just to round out some of the stuff that's in the top 16, the only two Venusaur that were in top 16 were sitting at 15th and 16th. That was a Pokemon that I still think is really, really, really good. And I'm kind of surprised that it didn't place higher, but with all the Sweet Veil and whatnot that was up at the top, obviously G-Max Hatterene takes it on very well, and all sorts of things like that, I guess, were kind of contributing it to being a little lower in Top Cut. And then there's just a lot of like Dusclops and Trick Room options and things like that. Dusclops is apparently very good, which is still kind of like tough for me to wrap my head around, because for years and years and years it's just been like niche TR setter. Like it's there and it gets TR up for you, and then what? But this is the format where the and then what is actually enough to like propel it into usage. All right, so I think that's it. I'm sorry, that's my chair squeaking. We're going to wrap up our first segment here, and we're going to take a short break. And then after that, we will be joined by Ryan Tan. We've got some topics lined up to talk about, NPA and some of the things that go into running it. And then, of course, we're going to run down and highlight some of the things to do in the VGC realm that are available to you, given access to only a computer and a Switch. So you don't have to leave your home to partake in all these things that we'll be bringing to you in just a couple minutes. So stay right there. We'll be right back. Just sit tight. You don't have anywhere to go anyway. You're stuck in your apartment. Welcome back, loyal listeners, and thanks for sticking with us over our interlude. We're now back for the second portion of Soundproof this week, and we are now, and I'm excited to announce, joined by Ryan Tan, who is with us here. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Hi, it's great to be here.
So the goal for the show that Jake and I kind of had over the course of the week is because the world is becoming a different place than it was just a couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden, many of us are stuck inside our houses, not by choice this time, though. And most notably that our VGC in-person, I guess IRL is the way I would describe it, our IRL circuit is now shut down indefinitely, I guess. We wanted to highlight some of the online tournaments, online resources, content that's being created, and things like that, just to give our listeners a way to get their VGC fix.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world that we can't really control at this point, but VGC...
Well, you can't.
What? Say what?
What? I said you can't.
Well, I control the weather, so I can't do everything, Brendan.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, like, we all want our VGC fixed still, and there are certainly plenty of ways to go about getting that. And one way that a lot of people like to partake in is NPA, the National Pokemon Association, which Ryan Tan has a lot of experience with. So you want to quickly tell us about like your past experience in NPA, Ryan, and then what you're doing now.
Sure. So I guess for those of you who don't know what NPA is, it's a grassroots league that basically splits players up into 12 different teams. Basically, it's a draft style league, so we have about 24 managers who draft players into their respective teams and then go head-to-head in a 8v8 matchup against all the other players. And it's about an 11-week season that, without including playoffs. What I do, I am the commissioner of the league, so I kind of run the tournament, help organize it, make sure everything goes smoothly. And it's been something I've been doing for the past 2 years. Before that, I was a manager of one of the teams for about 6 years. So I've been in part of NPA for 8 years, which is a long time now that I say it out loud. And it's been around since like 2012, so hopefully we can keep it going. But it's a great kind of community tournament that's been around for a long time.
It's a highlight of the year, I think, for a lot of people. It's always a super fun experience. Yeah.
Were you around from the very beginning, Ryan?
No. So NPA
Or 8
started
years is
in
NPA 2, right? If I'm doing my math
yeah,
correctly.
yeah. NPA 2 would be 8 years ago. So NPA 1, which was in 2012, was started by Dewey Ha, and basically what would become to known as like the Nugget Bridge crew. Um, and it was basically a small tournament held on Smogon, which was way different than it was today. So like it was a legacies format. So there it happened at the end of the year where each player plays a different format, VGC format, and slowly kind of evolved into something that happens within the season, the actual VGC season instead of at the end of it. So it gives like players a unique opportunity because you get to practice during the season, and it helps kind of shape the metagame, which is pretty interesting, and gives a lot of new players opportunities to kind of either kind of look at other teams or get inspiration, learn a little bit more about the game. So I think it's a really cool experience in MPA. I also really love it because it highlights team dynamics. It's unlike any other tournament, which usually highlights individual accomplishment and achievement, and it also helps kind of, I guess, form new friendships across the community. I mean, we have a lot of different segmented team building groups or things like that, little cliques per se, but I believe that MPA kind of like really breaks that down and like trying to form these like friendships and partnerships between all these people across all the community.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's probably my favorite part of
Yeah.
NPA.
Yeah, definitely.
Monarchs has been like, this is the fourth year Monarchs has existed, and all 3 years in the past, it's been a like, obviously we care about the season when it's happening. We've had some good success until this current year, which we don't need to talk about.
I think we should talk about
No, it's fine.
I think we what happened to the queens again?
Oh, they're still reigning. They're just on their way out. It's fine. But like more importantly, like throughout the entire year following NPA, it's still been a very active like social chat, and so that's definitely my favorite thing to come out of NPA in general.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I this year kind of left the Monarchs to start my own team, and just kind of for an idea of like what kind of friend groups are formed. I still even like find myself popping into old Monarchs chats now and again. So I think that the social aspect is really cool. So Ryan, how did you initially become involved in it? I think you had said that you started out as a manager in was that right in NPA too? So you never even were playing in it, and you just jumped right. Okay.
Yeah, so I actually never played in NPA. So I think it's 2013 NPA 2. I was kind of getting my name out in the community, and they just restarted NPA back up, and they wanted to have manager signups. And I remember distinctly that I knew that like I didn't really want to be playing as much. I kind of wanted to be helping other people because I feel that's like kind of what I do best. I like to support other players and help them grow. So I decided to sign up for it, not really expecting much. I didn't think I was actually going to get a position as a manager, but I think I was basically the last person selected out of all 12 teams. I was the number 12 manager, so they added me in, and well, I guess I haven't looked back ever since. So I've been enjoying my role, and 2 years ago I decided to step away from it, and I kind of wanted to see different things happen to MPA, so that's why I took more of a leadership role as commissioner. So we've been seeing a lot of changes and improvements, and hopefully all for the better. So yeah.
Definitely. So what was like the biggest part of your motivation that made you step from manager into the commissioner role?
Sure. Well, basically, in MPA, were a lot of tricky situations where there was not exactly a outline guideline of rule set that is there for when contested like things happen, like events. And managers of the past, well, they've done a like great job in trying to like mitigate that. They haven't really tried to tackle those issues head on. So as the commissioner, I tried to bring more order and structure to the MPA by adding more detailed rules and procedures that help the game and help the tournament run smoothly and a little bit better organized. Of course, like that comes with some pushback here and there, but other than that, I feel that it's been a lot better and a lot more organized in the way we run things, and we play kind of very more like by the book and like an actual official tournament of BGC, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I kind of wanted to have a say in kind of like where the direction this league is headed to in terms of trying to keep the league as wholesome and inclusive as possible, as well as making sure that different like identities and different populations in our community is represented. So I've been trying to make that a focus of our MPAs.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
So like along with all the like planning and such and the like rules implementation that you just kind of mentioned, like what else do you have to do kind of day to day to keep MPA running once it's started?
Sure. So, I mean, people call me the dictator of MPA. No, I'm just kidding. In all seriousness, as a commissioner, let's see, what did I do? I set all the logistics. So, we set up, where it's going to be held. So, in this case, this year it's on a Discord server.
Mm-hmm.
So, we kind of run that thing, make sure everything is kind of organized and everything is good. We run a Google spreadsheet that keeps track of, tournament record, matchups, things like that nature. Setting the draft is actually a big part of what we do of the process, because it is an auction draft and it's pretty hard to set up unless you kind of have a good idea what you're doing, and not a lot of us do. And I don't really either, but I give it a shot. We run the draft on a Showdown server with a draft bot that we see in many other leagues like this. What else? Yeah, over or Seco.
Yeah.
But I guess mainly my main job is just to be there for the players and managers on a day-to-day basis to like straighten out all the conflicts, make sure that everybody's voices are heard. Kind of make my decisions based on rulings of like if there's like a disagreement between two teams, I kind of go in there and be like an unbiased voice to the decision and make sure that it's as fair as possible. What else? Well, I'm one of three, so
right. That was kind of leading into our next question. This is a lot for one person to do.
Yeah.
So there's a team with you this time around. Do you want to talk about it?
So there was a team with me last year as well. That was Jason Krell and Chalky. But this year it's with Regina and Sam. They are part of my commissioner committee. We're all equal in our say, and it's like a really good committee, especially when it comes to those tough decisions. You need to have like a majority rule in the commissioner committee to have it be our official decision. So we try to keep things kind of collaborate as much as possible in those decisions. But in terms of like splitting of responsibilities on a day-to-day basis, I would say like my main job is more for like the team relations stuff and making sure that all the players and managers are happy. Sam is more in charge of like the logistics, making sure those pairings get put up on time, making sure these results get turned in. He also makes like activity decisions, when I'm not there and things like that. And Regina kind of helps handle what we're hoping to get up is a regular stream, and she's been working on the logistics of that. She runs the Twitter, been like doing all these other things. As somebody who hasn't been involved in MPA, Regina has been doing a lot behind the scenes that like really makes the tournament run smoothly. So all three of us have been working around the clock to make sure it kind of works and make sure the tournament is as smooth as possible. Nice.
It's funny because it actually is like an around the clock thing because we have players in like however many countries. I always think it's funny when I like go to bed at night and then I wake up and one of our matches happened at like 3 a.m. my time. I'm like, hey, congratulations.
Yeah, it definitely happens where there's like some issues that happen at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and luckily Sam works the night shift, so he's awake during that time.
Oh,
so
perfect.
So it's a crazy but also like good scenario for us to have somebody around the clock to deal with these issues. I have to also give a special shout out to Zach Giroux. He is our basically spreadsheet connoisseur. He organized the entire spreadsheet, puts all that programming like into it to make it dynamic and like work really smoothly. It's really hard to like get that all accomplished.
Yeah.
I got to give him a special shout out.
It takes a lot of time to do those too.
Yeah.
And it looks really
Trust
pretty.
me, I tried last year. It was not fun.
So I know you guys are like I guess a new manager committee. Can you talk a little bit about like what your vision for the league is and how you've been implementing it so far this year?
Yeah, so the vision of this league has been always to kind of make sure that these matches are high quality and kind of help both players get practice throughout the season, but also to help the new players kind of learn from like the more veteran players. So we've been kind of pushing for a lot of replays and more publicity surrounding these matches and making sure that people can have a chance to view them as they can. I've also been, as I said before, like my whole goal of NPA is to make this tournament basically a beacon for what I believe should be like the future of our community, which should be more inclusive and welcoming to like all members in our diverse like VGC community. So I've been trying to make sure that things like that have been followed and how do I say it like pushed into like the right direction for all the players and managers.
Gotcha. I think that's awesome, and I think that that's definitely something that I've noticed is that it seems like it's become less exclusive overall, at least over the last couple of years, which is really good. It seems like it's opened up. A lot of teams are more willing to accept like newer players and players with different ideas and players with different identities and things like that, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
I had another question that I seem to have forgot. So one of the things that we asked Jen when we had her on to talk about IRL tournaments a couple weeks ago is what can players do to make your life easier? Because I know you were just telling us all about what goes on behind the scene and what you and Regina and Sam all do, but what can players do as far as like people who are participating in NPA or really in online tournaments in general to make the lives of the TOs easier?
Sure. I think the biggest rule is follow the rules.
It's sad that it doesn't go without saying.
Yeah. I mean, the rules are there to be enforced, especially like when teams run into like, disagreements. Like that's the whole point of having a rule set, So if they have a disagreement, we can just look back and say like, okay, this is what we all decided before the season started. That this is X, Y, Z is going to happen, based on this. So it kind of helps things get set in stone and make sure that people follow like proper procedures and different rule sets to make sure that everything goes as smooth as possible. And I mean, if you don't like what you see in the rules, like you can always talk to one of the commissioners, especially like me. I always try to like accommodate and make sure that people's opinions and voices are heard in regards to the rules. So don't feel afraid to reach out to me if you have a disagreement or think that the rules were used in an improper way. I guess the next thing like is kind of what I said before. Represent yourself as you would see best for both your team, the league, because NPA is a basically a glimpse of what is the best like of our community. So I hope players, while the tournament is still going and doesn't even mean too much, I hope they still understand that you're a representation of the community as a whole. So as long as you be wholesome, respectful, like that's like all I really could ask for. And the last thing, if you have a suggestion of how to improve NPA or have anything, we always would love that before the season starts.
Yeah.
I get a lot of things like, oh, it should have been done this way, it should have been done that way, you know.
Right,
Like
I know what he's saying.
that is all well and good, and I keep those comments, but you know, there's so little I can do during the season.
Right.
I can only push it on for next season. I mean, this year is my last season actually, being commissioner of NPA, but I feel that, you know, for the future years when the NPA 10 and above goes on, like I feel it's great to have that type of feedback, especially community feedback from the players who are involved in the tournament itself, to happen before the tournament starts, because that'll create a more efficient, like, you know, a more structured way to go through everything. So, you know, we love your comments. Just, you know, tell us beforehand.
I think it's also a reasonable ask to say that we should try and make those suggestions constructive as well.
And not just inflammatory.
Right. So, since you're planning to pass off being commissioner, are you planning to get back into managing?
I don't know yet. Honestly, like,
Tough
I kind of want to
question.
see what it's like to be a player.
Oh.
I mean, I've been a part of NPA for 8 years.
I would draft.
I don't know
you
if I'm
in.
good enough to be drafted, you know, anymore. You know, so, but you know,
I would nom.
Dot
nom.
but you know, like, I've given like a lot to NPA, and I'm glad to see it continue on, and I know it's going to continue to be just fine when I leave. So I'm pretty optimistic on like the direction it's going, and whether I'm a manager or a player or just a spectator, I'm pretty excited to see what the future of NPA holds.
Well, that's awesome. Well, on behalf of me and hopefully Jake, thank you for your service.
Of course.
I know it's been a tournament that we've become pretty increasingly involved in over the last couple of years, and like Jake mentioned, it's something that we have a lot of fun doing, so thank you. For the people that are listening to the podcast, if NPA is something that you'd like to be interested in, please, if you'd like to be interested, if you want to get involved in NPA, hopefully you're already interested. There is a Discord, which is where the tournament is being run today, and it's open to everybody, so if you want to join and come in, check out the replays, or, you know, talk in general, or make misinformed predictions, you know, that's
or just
definitely,
be a fan, you know.
Just
you gotta
be a fan
of the Babas.
You gotta be a fan of the bot. We are the best fan.
Single.
I think we're the only team with a fan. But yeah, if you want to get involved in NPA, it's not open for signups anymore, but definitely you can look towards future years. Usually it's run about one per year, but if you do want to get make NPA part of your VGC fix, there are, I don't know, I'm not going to do 8 matches times 12. What is that, 96?
There we
So
go.
96 matches per week that you can watch. So there's a ton of content if you want to look for teams or analyze play, or you have a favorite player or a favorite team that you like to follow. So there's a lot going on there. So definitely check that out. And I think usually we have links to this sort of stuff in our description, but Jake does all that, so I don't want to speak for him as far as what
Yeah,
things
no,
will
I'll
and
put
won't be
NPA stuff in the description for sure.
Okay, beautiful. I did.
Thank you very much.
You're doing the Lord's work. So on top of NPA, there are a lot of other online tournaments that are happening, and especially since the shutdown, the quote-unquote shutdown of the circuit was announced, a lot of new tournaments have been announced. So there's a couple of circuits that have been going on even before, you know, everything kind of dropped, and we've talked about them before on this show, and also had the TO on, and that is the Galler Friendlies that are run by VGC Stats and Zach Carlson.
The wonderful Zach Carlson, who does
Such a great tournament.
Yeah, he does so many great things, whether it's VGC Stats or the Friendlies or just being a wonderful person with a fantastic Twitter account.
Yeah, and I think those like Galler Friendlies, they hit over 100 players consistently each week.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think this next one is postponed, right? Because he wanted to
he had
away.
pushed it off because I think it was conflicting with some of the other tournaments that were going on.
I know there's a Victory Road
that's
tournament
Raw.
this weekend, so that might be why.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we'll use that as our segue.
Yeah.
There, Victory Road is one of our favorite, I guess, resources. One of our favorite organizations and teams that does VGC stuff. in the entirety of VGC. They've been streaming some of the European regionals. They've hosted some great events like the World Champion Invitational. They have some great resources. Their coverage of regional level events just on their Twitter alone with graphics
It's
and
so
teams
good.
and everything like that is like basically unmatched.
You all know by now that this is a Victory Road standing
stand.
podcast. Yes,
We stand so hard. But they are hosting I think I don't know if there's any way to look at sign-up numbers, but what I would expect to be a big tournament this
most
weekend.
likely, yeah.
That's taking place over the weekend, and notably is a top 8 prizes. A lot of the tournaments that get hosted online just tend to be like winner take all, or like winner gets all and second place gets their money back. But they're actually paying out prizes to all of top 8, and there's an entry fee. So it does kind of very closely mimic like the regional tournament structure, and it can be played online. And then another big tournament which was recently announced, which is really cool, and I think that these types of tournaments, kind of like the World Champion Invitational and the ONOG stuff that happened a couple years ago, is really awesome. But it's a large tournament, or hopefully large. I keep saying large. The way that it's being pitched is that it will be large. A tournament that's going to be hosted by A-Drive and Wolf. So that one will be, I think, really cool. It's going to be, I would guess, probably larger than the Victory Road tournament, just because the level
they're like
of
the
content
two
creation.
juggernauts of Pokemon.
Yeah,
so.
so it'll bring in a lot more casual players, and I think the numbers will be much higher. So I think that will be really awesome, and they've committed to paying out prizes to more than just the winner of the tournament. There's going to be really awesome coverage of it, of course, because these are our two big content creators in the community. So there'll be all sorts of content as a result of that, and then also it'll be a great tournament to play in.
I know that Zach Carlson is also helping them run that, so anything that he touches is bound to be amazing. And I think in the tweet that A-Drive announced it with, it was big prizes, I think was the quote from that tweet. So
yes, it does say big prizes.
So hopefully that'll be pretty fruitful. I know that'll be something I'll probably enter if I can get 6 viable Pokemon on my game anytime soon.
Yeah, that's what holds me back, to be honest.
But no, that should be really cool. One other, I know there's a bunch of other sites running tournaments, but I know that Rose Tower has a pretty active circuit. I know we've mentioned some of their tournaments before. And then obviously there's stuff like Zelda challenges that happen every so often, but those don't really happen with any kind of regularity. So that's something we gotta kind of follow once they pop up.
And those are winner take all. And you're welcome to run your tournament the way you want, but I know that there was a lot of moaning and groaning on Twitter about how the winner take all tournaments like aren't worth the entry and this, that, and the other thing. But I don't know. I don't personally have a problem with it if you know what you're getting yourself into. It's not like you were expecting a top 8 prize and then you didn't. But anyway, that's besides the point. Those tournaments have been going on for a bunch of years, and I think there's definitely a possibility. I'm just kind of projecting here that because we don't have any sort of like big international tournaments coming up, and I don't want to be a downer, but I would say that an AIC is definitely in doubt, if not likely to be canceled at this point. That it's certainly possible that Sam will choose to run those more frequently or in place of an AIC and stuff like that.
Yep. As far as like other resources go, there's a lot of other things that we could talk about as far as places to get information, places that can keep you occupied during this boring time in our lives. One of those is a place that is a pretty good collection of like info and links and discussion, and that is the subreddit r/VGC, which Ryan also happens to be very involved with. So if you want to talk about that real quick, Ryan.
What a great segue.
Wow.
Amazing.
I wonder why I was invited to this podcast. So RVGC is definitely a great resource, especially if you're new to VGC. It has a lot of members. I don't even know what the count of the members is right now. There's got to be. Let me pull it up. Well, it has a lot of members, and it's a great resource if you want to, ask for team advice. Kind of like take a look at the metagame and things like that. And it's consistently growing every day. So there's a lot of members. There's a lot of teams. Some are good. Some are, still fresh. But everybody got to start somewhere.
Right.
My first team was a Charizard, Jolteon, Milotic, and like a Sceptile. That was my four. So everybody's got to start somewhere, and definitely RVGC is a great resource for both new players as well as a good place for like old players to like look at different perspectives of the format, a fresh perspective. It can also be a great place for discussion of like random things, such as we have a post right now pinned that is about the cancellation of all the events. So if you want to moan and groan somewhere else, you can always moan and groan in our VGC subreddit. So
it's encouraged, and you heard it from the mod
There we
here.
go.
So if anybody's mad about it, you heard it from two mods here. Jake, do you also endorse moaning and groaning on the VGC subreddit?
I mean, if Ryan does, I'm not going to go against it.
Beautiful. And there are just shy of 17,000 members on that subreddit, which is pretty incredible. Honestly, I didn't realize it was that big.
I still remember when it was like maybe like 500.
Yeah,
600.
that really
Yeah.
wasn't too long ago
Yeah.
either in the grand scheme.
It's only a matter of time before we get subreddit of the day.
That'll be fun.
That would be cool. It might even grow even more than that. So that's definitely a really good resource. I think that is probably a good place to get, kind of like the most diverse content. Is you can, have like metagame discussions and see tournaments, team reports, rate my teams. If you're really dedicated to using like one specific Pokemon, if you can type it into the search bar, and I'm sure that somebody's had some idea. So it's cool to look for stuff like that. And of course, a lot of the information that is coming out about our live circuit will definitely be posted in there
for
as
sure.
well.
For other information about the live circuit, there are a couple Twitter accounts we would probably recommend following. The main one being just @PlayPokemon. That's like the official Twitter account for the circuit. They're the ones who provide updates whenever events are canceled, and I imagine they will post something, if further events are canceled or if they're confirmed to still be happening later on down the line. I believe like May 15th is the current cutoff date for tournaments. So everything up until then
I think that's what it is.
is currently canceled, and there'll be no CP given out until then. I imagine when that draws nearer, they will either confirm that we're going back on, or we will be holding off a bit further. Any further than that, like you mentioned earlier, Brendan, we kind of get into NAIC territory, which would be...
Yeah, that's kind of the uncharted zone.
Yeah.
If it goes like literally any further than that.
Right.
I don't know about literally, because I guess you could theoretically make a smaller amount of time, but if it has to be extended past that, you have to think that, unfortunately, NAIC might not be in the cards for this year. And then I think that was everything else we wanted to touch on. And finally, I'm sure a lot of you guys that, if you've made it to our podcast, have a pretty good familiarity with a lot of the video content that's out there. But there are a bunch of YouTubers and streamers, and the number of people that are doing it seems to be increasing, which is really exciting for us at this time. So our community does, of course, have, some of the blue bloods that have been doing it for a really long time, like Aaron Zhang. James Beck, I think, has been doing YouTube content for quite a while now. Of course, Wolf, who is kind of like our poster boy at this point and does a really good job as an ambassador for the community, has been making a lot of YouTube content, and recently has started doing it full time, which is really exciting. And also does, I think, somewhat regular streams. And as far as big content creators, we also are kind of recently lucky enough to have A-Drive kind of step in to our community after he was usually doing like shiny hunting and Let's Plays and stuff like that. He's kind of taken on a competitive drive as well, so has been attending live tournaments and has been creating content that has to do with VGC.
Yeah. So there's some other, stronger players that we know that have also stepped into the...
Yeah, I think it's awesome that all these strong players just like got capture cards with the change to the Switch.
Yeah, so like Jamie Boyd's been doing YouTube stuff for a long time, and he's recently gotten back into it. Colin Heyer and Edu Eduardo Cunha have also started streaming pretty regularly. I think both of them stream almost every day, if not every day during the week, so that's pretty cool. I know Colin's been super excited about it recently.
Players.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There might be some Liberty Garden content coming down the pipeline. We're all familiar with them. Everyone's favorite VGC mother, Jen Badamos, like streaming group.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure there's more that we are forgetting off the top of our heads now too.
Yeah, I think it's just great that, I think the fact that the game is on the Switch now makes it so much easier to stream. And I think there's going to be a lot more VGC content available just because of that accessibility standpoint.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
For sure.
if you're an aspiring streamer, I highly recommend
Now is the time when everyone's
You get
cooped
into
up
it.
indoors. They got nothing else to do. Yeah, for sure.
And if you're just an avid consumer of content, now is kind of like the golden age of VGC content. There's multiple videos. I remember like a couple years ago, it used to be like, you wait for Road to Ranked, and then, maybe somebody else would have a video out at some point. But now there's like there's people to watch all the time. Like if you're just looking for live streams, there's multiple videos that come out every single day, and sometimes multiple times a day. So just like a really good time to be consuming content as a VGC player.
For sure.
I'm trying to think if I thought I was thinking of. And the one other thing is, believe it or not, there are other VGC podcasts.
Oh right, yeah.
I know this is your favorite, and that's totally fine. But there are a couple other VGC podcasts. I know that's kind of an easier medium to consume, like if you're in the car. Although I guess most people aren't in the car anymore.
I haven't driven since this past
When you're in the
weekend.
shower.
That's weird.
Yeah, there you go. In the shower.
Yeah.
When you can't, whatever your situation where you can't consume visual content. The one that the longest standing podcast is called The Hyper Voice, and that's run by Alex Underhill and Stephen Morioka. And I know I was listening to that every once in a while. I'll pick up an episode, and they have like all sorts of different guests, and they do it regularly, and they've been doing it for a long time. So that's a really
they're
cool
the
one.
OG VGC podcast for sure. They do a great job.
Right. And I don't know if the Clanging Scales has any episodes out recently.
They're pretty sporadic.
But they're entertaining when they do put the episodes out. So definitely, look that one up. And then, is there one?
Nope, there's no more. That's it.
That's
no.
it. There are no
Is
more.
the Palpine still a thing?
I don't know.
They make one like once a year.
The one that we were like jokingly forgetting about is, of course, the Cablecast, which is run by our friend Caleb Breyer, who is also on the more sporadic end, but I think slightly more consistent than some of the other ones. But he does good stuff too. Love Caleb.
Definitely.
Well, this is definitely my favorite.
Aww.
So
We got the Tan stamp of
Tan
approval,
approved.
everyone. I'm going to tweet that. Ryan Tan endorses Soundproof for president.
We're running for president.
I didn't tell you?
I don't want that for us, Jake.
I already turned in the paperwork, so it's kind of hard to back out now.
Well, if it's legally binding, then I'll do what I have to do. But just know that I'm not happy about it.
All right, I think
we've
reached.
We're gonna segue into Jake's segment
No, I think
here, so I'll let
before
him
that,
take it
we're
away.
gonna have Ryan come up with his question for us. It's like every time we have a guest, we like to have them ask us a question, whether it be about Pokemon or other video games or the nutritional value of a candle, as our very first guest, Aaron Trailer, brought up. So he set the bar pretty high. I believe in you.
He did.
I believe you
I
can
know.
break it, but this is your time, Ryan.
Oh wow, this is pretty hard.
The nutritional value of 2 candles doesn't count.
I guess I'll have one. What is your most interesting life hack you've seen about the whole quarantine situation?
Ooh.
Wash your hands. I know that's not really a life hack, but I have been not directly exposed to the virus, but very much exposed to a lot of the preparation that is around the virus. I work in multiple nursing homes, so I work with like the most at-risk population, and basically like all of the biggest recommendation that's coming down is because this is something that's like usually passed by touch and it survives on surfaces for a really long time, is you can do yourself a big favor by just washing your hands a lot and washing your hands thoroughly. That's like one of the number one recommendations. Obviously like the social distancing is like another big one too, because if you can't come into contact with people, obviously the chances of getting it or lower, but just wash your hands. I know that's not like a life hack for like surviving extended periods of time alone, but if you still are going out into the community, or even if you have people coming in and out of your apartment and you want to try and minimize your risk of contraction or becoming a carrier, just wash your hands like all the time.
I love that it took a pandemic for the community as a whole to be recommending hand washing. Like, is this what it's come to?
Yeah.
I don't really. I've been spending most of my time at home alone since this has all started, especially in the last like week or so. So I don't really have a great like life hack, but I think the biggest thing that I personally have been recommending to people is just making your contact with, well, like coming into contact with as few people as possible, and whether that's like physically, like literally, obviously, but also just in general. Like I'm trying to avoid going to places where I know a lot of people have been, or I know where a lot of people will be, just because I know that even though I'm personally in a pretty low risk group, even if I do contract it, like I don't want to be spreading it to people that may not be able to fight it off as well as people in my demographic, or like spreading it in general. Like I don't want to contract it. Like if I do, I'm not going to freak out about it, but I obviously don't want to be sick. Who wants to be sick? So like I think limiting social interaction, as unfortunate as it is to like not see people and hang out with people, it's helpful. Right. And I think one thing that I've been doing to combat the like not seeing people part of it is just talking to people online. Like a couple nights ago I was playing like Jackbox games with a bunch of friends on Discord, and like,
oh yeah, that's been fun. I've done that
so that's a really good way to still like interact with people and get that social
yet.
interaction without actually coming into physical presences with them.
And I just want to change gears. Hopefully this is a little more along the line. I mean, it's still anyway. I recently found out, I know that like people aren't going to the grocery store as much, and as far as like things that you can cook and feed yourself with things that might be typically laying around your apartment, I recently found out that like when you're cooking ramen, you could just like crack an egg in that bad boy and then just let the egg cook in the ramen, and that has like changed my life.
That is an elementary school life hack that has been with me since at least 2005.
That's amazing. I didn't know that was a thing. I just like read it on, I don't know, it was some like random Ask Reddit where somebody was like, oh yeah, I just like crack an egg into my ramen, and I was like, oh my god, you can do that. Do you have one, Ryan? Anything you've discovered or read? Yeah.
That's what I was asking you. I don't really know.
Oh, okay. Well, crack an egg into your ramen. That's all I got.
I highly recommend. I bought. My dad gave me this thing from the mail. It's literally. I forgot what it's like a lazy glasses. It is a glasses that basically you can see 90 degrees while laying down, so you can watch TV while being fully flat. It's
so it's
changed
like
my life.
That's awesome.
What is that called? Is that called a periscope?
Yeah.
No, is that what that? Isn't that what it's called?
It's basically like a periscope in glasses format.
That's amazing.
It is an unbelievable.
That's really cool.
I highly recommend. I'll post the link on the Twitter to this this podcast link so everybody can like get
there we
their
go.
own. But that's my
promo
life
by
hack.
Ryan Tan. Are you sponsored? Are you sponsored by this company?
Hashtag.
If you're hashtag ad,
hashtag ad.
Cut
there we go.
That should have been in the contract that you signed. So if you're making any money off this, we'll be expecting our check in the mail.
All right. Well, now that brings us to the segment Brendan was alluding to, my favorite one, the music segment. This week, not even this week, like today specifically, I've been playing "Greedy" by Ariana Grande on repeat. It was just this random song that got stuck in my head and I can't get it out. But more generally, one of my favorite bands, Joywave, put out a new album last week, I think last Friday, called Possession. And that's really good. I've been playing that a lot. It's a really good album to like listen all the way through, just because like the way it flows, I think, is really cool. I was supposed to see them on May 2nd, I think, but they postponed their tour to September. So hopefully by then everything's all cleared up so we can go to that concert. But yeah, Possession by Joywave is mine.
Before I talk about what I have been listening to this weekend, I just want to talk about things that we shouldn't be listening to this week, and that is because we regrettably had to cancel Vanessa Hudgens.
Oh yeah.
So if you had the thought of going back to listen to any of Vanessa Hudgens' High School Musical music, you're not allowed.
Gotta
to
go
do
my
that.
own way.
That's the
yeah,
law.
you do, girl.
I gotta change my recommendation.
Oh no.
Now.
Quick, you got a minute. But the thing that I am going to recommend is I've been like throwing it back more than listening to new stuff lately. And one of my favorite bands is Jimmy Eat
Oh.
World. And I think everybody is familiar with the song in
Yeah.
the middle, but that entire album, Bleed American, is like one of my favorite albums of all time. And even the album that immediately followed that, which is called Futures, those are like two of my favorite albums. That was like a big high school band for me. So highly recommend listening to those albums in their entirety and not just adding the middle to your iPod Mini or whatever it was that
People
we were
still
using
use
back in those
iPods.
times.
Yeah.
My turn.
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess for this trying time, I highly recommend Frank Ocean's cover of Strawberry Swing.
Ooh.
It is
Mm.
really good. I don't know, it speaks to me on multiple levels, and it is very, like, fitting when you think the world is about to end. You know, at least you enjoyed the good times here.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to be something a little bit more uplifting, I'm sorry, I have two, basically. I couldn't
That's fine.
decide. But
Oh, please.
if you want to have something more uplifting, a little bit more like happier, I would highly recommend Caro Caro Bonito's Trampoline.
I think I know them. I don't know if I know that song, but I know that name.
I'm not familiar with that, actually, so I'll look that up.
Yeah, you should look it up. It's pretty fun songs right there.
I do look up a lot of the music that people recommend on this show, and I think I will continue to
Yeah.
do that. So it's good. So that's going to do it for us from our second part of the show here. So again, big thank you to Ryan for coming on. We'll definitely be in touch with your agent if we need you on again sometime. So, so thanks for coming on. And just remember that if anybody asks, specifically if Caleb asks, this is your favorite BGC podcast.
Oh yeah, totally. Also, I was totally surprised that I was called on to this VGC Soundproof podcast for MPA and not the Hail focus episode. I
Oh my
totally
gosh,
thought that
I
would
didn't
be
even
my
We'll get
answer.
you and Oliver on together when we do our Hail episode. How about that?
Okay.
And
that
I'm going
better
to be hosting
happening.
that episode alone. Jake
There we
will
go.
not. So thanks again for joining us. Jake and I are going to take a short break, and we will be right back. So don't go anywhere. Thanks so much for sticking with us. We're back with just a quick outro here, as Jake was just telling me. We're gonna make sure that we have all these links available to you now that Jake has given me permission to say this. We kind of outlined a lot of content that is kind of available online, so we'll make sure to provide that aforementioned content in the links so that you don't have to go searching for it just because we've talked about it.
Yeah, pretty much everything we talked about today I'll make sure is linked, just so it's easier for y'all. That'll all be in the description on whichever platform you are listening to Soundproof on. As always, follow our Twitters, Soundproof VGC, Mr. BDog46 VGC, Major Bowman _ not Soundproof. I said Soundproof VGC. Oh my God, Soundproof Cast.
Just
Why did I say that?
Soundproofcast, yeah.
Oh God, Soundproof Cast, Mr. BDog46 VGC, and Major Bowman _
Thanks for remembering my VGC.
I did this
We
time.
talked
yeah.
about this last time. And then, as always, make sure you're all staying safe and healthy.
Yeah.
Don't do anything that I wouldn't do. I basically outlined the things that I wouldn't do a little bit earlier on. Make sure you're doing diligent hand washing. Make sure you're socially isolating yourself, social distancing yourself. Social isolation is a little extreme. Let's say
That's
social
different, yeah.
distancing.
There we go.
But yeah, just make sure you're staying safe and smart out there. Because we definitely don't want our listener numbers to take hits. So until 2 weeks from now, and things could even be different at that time.
Yeah.
Again, safe and healthy, and hopefully we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.